When you invest in yourself, you invest in your future. Number one, take some time out of your busy lives to disconnect from your world. Shut your cell phone off, turn the TV off, power down your computer, sit your body down for a few minutes and close your eyes. Number one. Number two, take some breaths and center yourself. When you center your attention into the present moment, you have more energy to create with. When your mind wanders to the predictable future or the familiar past, that's normal. Just become aware of it. Keep working on settling yourself back down into the present moment. When you're in the present moment, you're the most creative. Number three, ask yourself, can I be defined by a vision of the future instead of the memories of the past? What do I want in my life? And take the time to answer the question. As you begin to contemplate and think about the answer to the question, you're changing your brain. When you make your brain fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations, that's the beginning steps of changing your mind. Next, decide on the emotions you'll feel when you begin to create that future. And teach your body emotionally what that future is going to feel like. And don't get up until you begin to feel those emotions. Next step, step number 4, rehearse in your mind who you're going to be when you open your eyes. The things you have to do, the choices you have to make, the steps you have to take. Review them over and over again. Number 5, you can't go to the future holding on to the biology of your past. Decide what thoughts you can bring to your future. Write them down. Thoughts like, I can't, it's too hard, I'll never change, I'll start tomorrow, what's wrong with me, it's someone else's fault. Decide on what behaviors or actions or unconscious habits you have to change. How do you talk? Do you complain? Do you blame? Do you make excuses? Do you feel sorry for yourself? Just become so conscious of those behaviors that you'll never go unconscious again. And lastly, you have to decide what emotions no longer belong in your future. That means if you want to be wealthy, you can't take lack. If you want to be healthy, you can't take insecurity or fear. You got to begin to condition your body to a new mind. If you do this every single day, your personality creates your personal reality. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. Change any one of those things, and you change your life. And begin to measure the effects of you it causes. Give it a shot. Now, there's dangers to be in the present moment. There's dangers to express love. There's dangers to trust, because if you're living in an environment where survival is the credo, you're not going to want to close your eyes and go within. You're not going to want to trust anybody. You know, this is not a time really to relax. This is a time to be vigilant. So then people they can intellectually understand it, but they can't get to that level because they're always perceiving their environment as the jungle. So when we begin to overcome those emotions of stress that are highly addictive, the body is no longer being tormented like an addict. That is when the body will liberate energy, and that's when our heart starts to open, and that's when we start to believe in possibility again. So if our personality creates our personal reality, we make a decision first. We examine who we've been, and I call it crossing the river of change, from the old self to the new self. Crossing that river is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar, and you are going to feel like it's unpredictable, because the moment you're no longer thinking that way or acting that way or feeling that way, you're going to feel like an unknown. Now, this is biological, the neurological, the chemical, and even genetic death of the old self. This is the pain that you experience because the body's looking for its familiar chemical state. That pain is normal, and if you understand that void, that unknown, is the perfect place to create it, that's the place you want to create it, and not to fear it, but to embrace it. And your body's craving the familiar chemicals that it's addicted to, then you might want to say when you're in that place, well, the best way to predict my future is to create it, not from the known, but from the unknown. Now, this perfect place of creation is where people begin to do the uncommon. This is where their soul begins to speak to them. This is where they see a greater purpose for themselves in their lives. And they're no longer playing by the small-minded games any longer because they're connected to some bigger vision in the future. I think transformation is really the one thing that I'm more passionate about than anything else. And so I think number one, taking time out of our busy day for ourselves is the greatest service that we can do for ourselves, for our family, for the people we work with, and for our community. Now, if most people's attention is on their external environment, on their body, and on time, and they wake up every morning and they get out of bed and they do the same thing they've been doing for the last 20 years, then their body's already programmed into a predictable future. Their body's already on autopilot. They have a thought of the coffee pot, and the next thing they know, they have coffee in their hand. They have a thought of the shower, the next thing they know, they're in the shower. They have a thought about going to work, the next thing they know, they're in the car. So their body is following their mind. If they're living by the same emotions every single day, then their body, for the most part, is in the past because emotions are a record of the past. So finding the sweet spot of the present moment in our meditation is so highly important because the body has been trained to be in the future. So then most people, when they take their meditation and they stick it in as another thing to do so they don't have to feel guilty, that's not the answer either. Working with your body and understanding that it's the animal, and we do this in our workshops. We make people, we don't make them, we ask them in their meditations to really get to that point where they're unfolding in that infinite field of potentials as thought alone. In other words, if you're going to heal yourself by thought alone or create something in your life by thought alone, then you have to become thought alone. This is the key element where all of a sudden now, when you keep practicing bringing your body back into the present moment and you become aware that it's thinking about, well, what about this thing I have to do and this plane I have to catch and this contract I have to sign and that person I have to call, that's a predictable future. And you become aware that you're investing your energy into that reality because where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Or you're living by some emotion of impatience or frustration or vigilance, then you're siphoning energy out of the present moment and you have no energy to create with. So every time you become conscious that you're moving out of the present moment, and just like riding an unbridled stallion, every time you bring that body back into the present moment and you relax it back down into the present moment and you surrender into nothing, every time you do that, you're reconditioning your body to a new mind. In other words, you're not allowing your body to become the mind. Now, people will say, well, that's going to take a lot of work. And I say to them, well, what's the alternative? What do you want to do? You want to do drugs? I mean, nothing is going to help you get to the present moment but you. And if you practice being present every single day in your meditations, you will be more present in your life and less preoccupied with that worst case scenario, that moment where something could go wrong and living by those hormones of stress. And your body then finally starts to trust you. And when your body finally starts to trust you...
Welcome back, everyone. So I hope you can see how powerful this is. Really tune into abundance. Don't think of abundance as a physical aspect. Tune into what abundance truly is, which is having a mindset that you already are enough, that you already have enough, and that you're grateful for what you have.
Is the moment it's not worried about the unknown. The unknown is no longer dangerous. The unknown is actually an adventure. So we do the work in teaching people how to find the present moment. And when they begin to distinguish between when you're present and when you're not present, and they're able to do that well enough, they'll know the moment it's time to create. Now, this funny thing happens if you really lock into the present moment. All the things you thought you wanted, you no longer want because you feel so whole in that moment, it's impossible to want. Now, that's when duality begins to unify, and that's the moment now where you're no longer living in polarity. I call that the natural state of being. And so, finding the present moment is one of the key elements that we use. Once you find the present moment, then the next step is to teach your brain and body emotionally what a new future is going to feel like. In order for you to do that, or in order for us to do that, we have to become conscious about how unconscious we are. We've been talking about that. The more you don't allow that thought, that behavior, that emotion to slip by your awareness, the more prone you are to be Gandalf on the bridge. And that monster that he was facing symbolically was all of his energy that was invested in the ego and in the old self. And when the God within us stands up and says, "You may not pass ever again," that's the moment that the soul begins to speak. And so we do the work every day to present ourselves as a greater expression of ourselves every day. And in the beginning, it will feel unnatural, it will feel uncomfortable, but I swear there's been hundreds of people, once they start seeing the effects and they find true joy within them because they're pleased with themselves and they got beyond themselves. I mean, in the brain scans that we studied with people, I can tell you that when people get beyond themselves, they are so incredibly powerful. The self that's attached to the emotional body, that's attached to the pain, that's attached to the past. And then, by the way, they tell the story based on those emotions. And Scientific American said 3 months ago that 50% of everything that people talk about in their past is a lie. It's not the truth, because they have a different brain today than they did at the time of the event. So getting people beyond their past, I think, and getting them into the present moment begins to liberate the most amount of energy. I think people are beginning around the world to wake up to the idea that the illusion is becoming so obvious. I mean, every single paradigm right now is collapsing, whether it's the political model, the economic model, the religious model, the medical model, the educational model, the environment. Everything's collapsing right now because it cannot function on the old laws, the old paradigms. Something new has to be created. So then, how do we begin to become supernatural? We have to begin to do what's unnatural. And when everybody else is in lack and in poverty, that is the time to give. When everybody else is in fear and worried, that's the time to demonstrate courage. When everybody else is judging and warring, that's the time to show love and compassion. And if we keep doing the unnatural long enough, sooner or later we'll begin to become supernatural. So our soul's journey then is to step out of the quagmire and the limited beliefs and perceptions that keep us playing in this limited realm, this limited density, where we are matter trying to change matter. Once we get a taste of the divine, and that divine, again, we've measured this over and over again. When you are that thought in that infinite space, when the brain is perceiving space and no longer perceiving objects, it gets very organized. It gets very coherent. And when the brain gets coherent, we get coherent. When the heart gets coherent, we love way more. And that's when we begin to emulate the divine. So over and over again, as we begin to climb out of these limited states, and we break free from those survival emotions that keep us feeling more like matter and less like energy, the side effect of all of that is becoming more energy and less matter. And that's when we start to demonstrate being a vibrational being. The field around our bodies when we're living in stress is about 3-4 inches in size. Open your heart, it can be up to 9 meters wide. We measured it. And so then when you begin to open your heart, you feel connected to something greater. That's the beginning. That's when the soul says, now I have infinite possibilities to experience, and I get to select as a free-willed individual where I want to place my attention. That's when we're liberated. So I think it's a great time for us to begin to really embody this information. I think it's a great time for us to hit the low points, to see those illusions. I mean, I had my own awakening, and you reach a point where you realize that the only time that you feel like yourself is you need the external world to remind you of it. That's a sign. When you can find an identity of yourself in the quietness and solitude of your own presence, that's when you're no longer seduced by the external world, and that's when you begin to experience true freedom.
Welcome back, everyone. So, when it comes down to abundance, it is this simple. It's coming to the realization that you are already enough. that you've already tuned into this frequency, that you already have what you want. You're not longing for it. You're not longing for the car. You're not longing for the mansion or the millions of dollars. Why? Because you, yourself, are already capable and you already have all this. You're putting yourself in the frequency that I already have what I want, not putting out to the universe that I want this, that I'm desperate for it. And that makes all of the difference. Tune into the frequency of abundance. So thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe and I'll catch you in the next one.